Good morning, welcome. This is my February community conversation for February 2023. I'm Lori Stone. I'm the local state representative for the 13th House District. Thank you for joining me this morning. I appreciate you signing in. Help yourself to donuts. I really appreciate Tim Hortons for opening their facility up to be a public venue that people can meet. What do you need to know? The next community conversation, mark your calendars, will be March 18th at the Franklin Library in Detroit, and that's at approximately where Shaner meets Gratiot. So 1/3 of the district is Detroit, 2/3 is Warren, approximately between Hoover and Hayes from 8 Mile to 14 Mile. I'm getting to know the district. I spent some time, visited the Matrix Center this week, which is a neighborhood community resource hub in Detroit, right there by the library, and visited the library to learn a little bit more about what resources are available, it's a whole new world learning Macomb County, Wayne County, Detroit, and Warren. I know a good portion of it, but it's still learning. So community conversations, I generally hold the third Saturday of each month. And this month I'm doing a special senior resource fair and spaghetti social, Monday, February 27th. There's flyers. Some of them have been mailed out. So if you know someone, it's for seniors and caregivers. We have a host of resources, including the Area Agency on Aging, AARP, Disability Network, United Way, My Care. We're addressing healthcare, well-being, engagement, and resources. So help get the word out on that. We're going to have Warren Woods culinary arts students are hosting our spaghetti social. So they have a nice buffet planned for us. Just kind of want to give you a heads up. I have a legislative director, Dawn Jakubowski. She helps me with the strategy of moving legislation. Devin Dudley is my constituent director. He's usually the first person to answer the phones, get the email, maybe the first voice that you encounter in my office. There are extremely good staff. They work really hard for constituents. I also usually bring on board 1 to 4 interns a semester, so they get firsthand work experience, perhaps sooner than later. But they help assist in districts, do policy research, attend committees, attend session, and they get firsthand experience that they can walk away with. I always like to lay out the expectations, being the teacher in me, ground rules, what is a community conversation, what it is not. Community conversations are regular updates from your elected officials. It is an opportunity for transparency and accountability when you have questions about policy, what's moving, how your tax dollars are being spent, what kind of services are being provided or not, and any requests or questions, this is the time. It is an opportunity to share your concerns, positions on legislation, request assistance. It's not a public debate. I do share positions, I do share background and reasoning, but we really aim to engage in respectful civil discourse. What is a state representative? I know those of you who've been here for a couple community conversations probably could give this, but I find so many people in the community don't have a good idea of what we do or what our job entails. So your state representative as an elected official represents everyone regardless of party. When you call my office, I don't ask who you voted for. I just ask, how can I help? Most people think of legislators as your lawmakers, and we are. We create policy, we staff committees or work committees, we make your votes, and we spend your tax dollars. But we are, when I describe it, we're community service for state government. or constituent service, consumer services, when you have a question, you pick up the phone, we help find you answers. We help when you run into problems with departments. These are some of the things we can do. I've heard people say, I can't bother you, you're too important. It's like, you're missing the point. That's my job. I work for you. When you call and I will help you navigate where bureaucracy, and figure out how to get you the best answer for your questions or help. We're also responsible for asking the questions about policy. Right now we're getting a big push for gun violence prevention policy. And they're like, how quick can you do it? How quick can you do it? You have the House, you have the Senate, you have the governor, how quick? And the one thing that it's hard to go back to constituents and say, good legislation isn't fast legislation. Taking the time to vet it and make sure that the legislation we adopt does what it's supposed to and doesn't have unintended consequence is part of the process. I provide updates and information. I aim for people in the district know what I'm doing, know how to get a hold of me and feel that I'm working hard for you. I represent 90,000 residents locally. You can always call me, email me, attend community conversations, and visit me at the Capitol. I provide regular updates, whether it's through a monthly community conversation, through mailings. Those are only occasional. E-newsletters, I try to send one out every month. Town halls and roundtables about specific topics and interests that people need to know about. I also take the time to attend community events and tour local businesses. So I know, what is the economic outlook in our community? What are the workforce needs and educational needs? I'm really looking forward to March. March is reading month. As a teacher, I love going back to the classroom and spending time in the local districts, reading to kids, talking to teachers, spending time in the teacher's lounge, and taking that firsthand experience back to Lansing. It's amazing how just 4 years out of the classroom, through COVID and other issues, things change, and we need to make sure that our advocates know what those issues are. I can help connect community members with resources. So one of the biggest needs for working families in our community is food assistance. You can work, 4 weeks, bring home a paycheck, and that not get you to the end of the month. So I work hard. There are a lot of resources in our community. If people have asks or needs, if you're hearing asks from neighbors, please refer them to me. I'd be happy to help them find what they need. I also, one of the privileges of this position is providing legislative tributes, which are certificates, awards, recognitions. It could be for a landmark birthday, it could be for an anniversary, it could be for a special occasion, an event, or a business event. So if you know of someone, I always enjoy the honor of presenting and recognizing these important landmarks. Let's see, for the first 6 weeks, this is my third term, I feel like I've served 6 months already. It's been insane in Lansing. I did want to take an opportunity to recognize the shooting on the campus of Michigan State University. I'm an alumni. I said Monday night, I was watching, as many of us in the community were, events unfold on campus. I have interns in my office that are MSU students. We have a ton of staff who live locally to the Capitol, are alumni. And so it was very personal to the Capitol, but you realize that Michigan State University is attended probably by at least someone from pretty much every high school in the state of Michigan. With over 85,000 students, it's hard not to know someone who was there or, had been there recently. So, just want to take the opportunity to center the students, the families, the community members, the first responders, and make sure we keep them in our minds. And, send good thoughts two of them because it's going to be difficult. I was a freshman at MSU when Columbine happened. I was sitting in my dorm watching it on television, and it felt like nearly 25 years later that it all connected back. It doesn't matter whether it was Oxford High School, and that was only 18 months ago. So the number one ask is, what are you doing about gun violence prevention? So I was a gun violence prevention candidate recognized by Everytown USA and Moms Demand Action. I've spent the last 4 years working with Giffords, which is the organization by Gabby Gifford, who is a congresswoman who was shot during one of her community conversation hours. And she has spent her time invested in strengthening policies that are common sense. And now, as serving in the minority, those were never priorities on the legislative agenda for the last 4 years, but we will be making sure that the bills that are introduced on Wednesday in the House were introduced Thursday in the Senate of last week. We'll be getting hearings, we'll be going through the process, and we'll be getting a vote. Any questions around MSU, gun violence prevention? It's usually a topic.
What bills exactly are they?
Yeah. So this first package is going to include universal background checks, which is 90% supported by gun owners. And none of these are mutually exclusive with Second Amendment rights. Every right comes with responsibility. I come from hunters and sportsmen, but we need to know that if you have a felony and you're not supposed to be in possession, you do not get sold a gun, even on a straw sale. The second package is safe storage. And I think it's 70% support that if you own a gun, you need to be responsible about storing it. We've seen way too much where young people, toddlers, can get their hands on a gun not knowing what it is. And there's documented evidence that the curiosity of children, they explore, what is this? What does it do? Does it really work? And they don't know, and it had catastrophic consequences. The number one risk for having a gun in the household is suicide. I mean, the headline grabbing is mass shootings, but truly it's lethal to have a gun in the house for someone who is suicidal, and they're more likely to harm themselves. That brings me to the third bill, which is the extreme risk protection orders, which is a family member or a close member. If someone sees someone in distress, in crisis, a threat to themselves or others, they can go to the authorities and ask for any guns to be removed from a household. It's a temporary solution. It goes through due process, and and they can be returned once that crisis is resolved. Those seem to be the three bills that have near universal support, overwhelming support. And I guess one thing that was pointed out to me is one of the most conservative states, Florida, has adopted these, and they're again, with you can be a legal gun owner, and these are common sense adoption of practices people should be doing already, with the exception of the extreme risk. That would be new. Where are we at? Committee assignments. I'm very pleased to be serving on education policy for a third term. Being a teacher, it's where my voice and my experience is strongest. I'm serving my third term on a combination of insurance and financial services. It was not a committee that I chose, but it is one that I've learned a lot through, and I've worked on some legislation. I'm on military, veterans services, and homeland security, which with the amount of work and service I've done for veterans in the community, it's nice to have a hand in the policy making. I've heard a lot of asks by veterans on, how to access those benefits and what we can do to better serve. So So I'm anxious. We had our first committee meeting this week. Affordable Housing Subcommittee. Affordable housing is an urban issue. It is a tourist spot issue. It's a universal issue for many reasons. And then I also was assigned to Agriculture Committee. And at first I was like, there hasn't been a farm in Warren for 40 years. You know, what am I doing on agriculture? But the one thing they pointed out is every aspect of our lives touch agriculture. Every food we eat, everything that is grown and processed, livestock, and agriculture can have far-reaching implications. So whether we have cyanobacteria growth in Lake Erie because of fertilizer runoff. And so it's nice. I've done some work as an educator, having my master's in science on some of these issues. So what initially was like, where did this come from? I'm finding great connections back to agricultural education. Plus, we have our own 4-H organization in the community. When I first came across it at the Thompson Resource Center, I was like, what is 4-H? Isn't that farm kids raising animals? And they said there's it's leadership, it's character. And we do have urban farms, and we have community gardens. And so our 4-H kids are active and involved in our community. If you know any young people who are interested in nature, let me know. They do day camps. They do programming, free or low cost. It's great. I'm working on bills. I've introduced really 8 bills. Some of them I've shared with other legislators. I'm working on personal financial literacy credits. I'm picking up where one legislator left off. Every high school senior has to take an economics credit, to have an economics credit. And one thing I've heard, even from high school students, is how much personal financial literacy is important. And our banks and financial institutions are like, when their customers know, what interest is, how to compare different lines of credit, they are better customers. So it's a topic that is universally supported. I have a repeal of the 3rd grade reading retention law. So there was an arbitrary and punitive law that was put into effect a few years ago where 3rd graders who don't pass standardized testing have to be retained. There is some exemptions, but if you talk to a professional educator, these are not best practices. If you're going to retain a child for developmental purposes, the best time to do that is in a preschool, kindergarten, or 1st grade before they identify with a group of peers. This legislation has the potential for long-term implications with corrections, high school dropouts, and so we'll be testifying. It'll get a committee hearing Tuesday, February 28th, and I'm glad to add my voice to it. I'm working on a kindergarten prerequisite. Currently, Michigan does not have a kindergarten mandate. A parent can enroll a child in 1st grade without a day of preschool or kindergarten. And if you talk to any teachers, can you imagine having to teach all the preschool, kindergarten content and get kids ready for 2nd grade? It is a stretch. So it's a common sense piece of legislation that is important, that any child has to have kindergarten before they go on to 1st grade. I've been working with Step Up to Cancer, Be the Match, on a patient access to donor registry information. So for the longest time, our Secretary of State led on enrolling organ donors. And as things moved online, we saw about a 10% drop off. So we were close to, I can't remember if it was 65% participating in donor registries. And I believe the goal was 70%, but that had slid back by 10%. And so some of these advocates came to me and said, we need more bone marrow donors, a more diverse pool of bone marrow donors. We need more organ donors. We have about 2,500 patients waiting for organs or tissues on a daily basis. That is life-saving. And so if you don't have your heart on your driver's license, that's one way you can signal to your family that you would like to be a donor. Make sure when you get your license renewal that you have the heart on your card. But what we're looking to do is to work with your primary care physicians, your urgent cares. And when you do an intake form, there'll be a question. Are you interested in being a donor? Would you like more information? And then that trusted voice in medicine can provide you with pamphlets and brochures from these organizations. They can answer your questions on like what are the medical implications, and they can help connect you with the next steps if this is something you're interested in. I've been working on the Kratom Consumer Protection Act. How many people have never heard of Kratom before? Yes, you're my target audience. So Kratom was a substance brought back by, if I remember right, Vietnam veterans in like Malaysian countries. It's a leaf on a tree that would be chewed or brewed for tea. It provided pain relief and had opioid type pain effects, milder, or pain relief. But recently, and largely people who are in recovery from opioid addictions, have a propensity for addiction. So they substitute one addiction for another. And when they take Kratom, they don't just take one a day or two a day. You know, I've heard of people going from taking 3 capsules a day to a bottle. And it can build up and cause toxicity. And there was a gentleman from Michigan who had moved from Michigan to Florida. He was in recovery. He developed a Kratom addiction, and he died from Kratom toxicity. He knew he needed help. He knew it was a problem. These are largely sold at supplemental stores or like gas stations, but we need to make sure that we're restricting this to access from youth. So this would set at 21. You must be 21 or older to purchase. And a lot of this was in alignment with the marijuana laws and regulations. We would add labels that alert people. Right now they're being told this product is great. Instead of going and taking methadone, how about you try this holistic natural response? Well, we know that even, cocaine and heroin were natural at some point. And so we want people that are educated to know what they're taking if they choose to use it. There are some people, I have friends who are marathoners who choose to use Kratom instead of Tylenol. And if you're not addicted to it, then it's not an issue. But also where it's not being packaged properly, we've seen salmonella contamination and fentanyl contamination, and that's been lethal. So common sense tells us regulate it, make sure that you know where what you bought comes from. There's pushes for a complete ban. There's not a whole lot that is being banned because then it pushes it underground and you don't have control. So just because it's banned in one state doesn't mean someone's not going to another state and getting it and using it. And so in all my research, we've been working on this for about 3 years now. We've learned that regulating it has been the best approach. I just introduced it's a bipartisan package on homeless youth protections. I've been working on this topic as part of a bigger poverty and homelessness caucus for 2 terms now, and our homeless youth shelter providers came to us and said, we see there's 3 weaknesses in service and shelter provisions. Can you help us? And so we introduced this package. Representative O'Neill from Saginaw Bay area, Representative Roth, and darn if I can't say what his district is, he and myself are working on this package of bills. The 6 bills that were led by the Democratic leadership in the House are people-led policy. One is returning tax dollars to taxpayers. So due to inflation, our tax revenue was higher than predicted. And so what are the ways that we're getting these back in the pockets of taxpayers? Well, one way is an earned income tax credit, which would put about $180 per taxpayer. But you have to file your taxes. Now, I know that there's some groups that don't have to file a tax form annually. But in order to get this, you'd have to submit a form. Everyone is eligible to file a form, even if you don't get a tax rebate. So we need to make sure people in the community know that come tax season, they want to file a form so that they qualify for this rebate. There'll be a lot of confusion around it, like why didn't this just get mailed to me? We are working on repealing the senior pension tax. That has gone through the House. I've got to check where it is, but the biggest hang up is it's a 4-year implementation process. And just because we couldn't take the hit to the budget all in 1 year, so there's 4 waves of rolling that out. If anyone is interested in finding where they are in that, reach out to my office. We'll figure that out for you. We are working on repealing legislation that undermines workers' right to organize and put a value on their what they're contributing to the labor force, restoring prevailing wage, repeal the 1931 Abortion Restriction Act, adopting equal protections for LGBTQ citizens in the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. Mondays and Fridays, so Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, most weeks you'll find me in Lansing. That's when we have committees, that's when we have session. Mondays and Fridays, as well as a lot of Saturdays and Sundays, I'm working in district. And that can look like answering constituent requests via phone, via email, working on developing legislative policy. One of the issues we're trying to get is in Macomb County, affordable and accessible childcare. It's an economic imperative. We have a lot of workforce, especially women, who are home caregiving that would like the opportunity to return and earn an additional income for the household. One of the biggest drivers is access to affordable childcare. So there's an opportunity through a Tri-Share Hub to bring that to Macomb County. They have 8 programs statewide, and it's something that I'm working hard to bring here. February is Black History Month. I sometimes get asked, like, why Black History? And I just discuss about what parts of history were left out of your textbooks when you were in high school. You know, there's a lot of things that weren't included in contributions that were made. I had a chart sent to me with over 50 contributions from African Americans in history, and I could only identify 6. And so we continue to work to make sure that we bring those elements of history to life and make sure that they're current. And Black History Month is one way we do that. I'm just going to make one more appeal to come see me and hang out at Franklin Library in Detroit, Saturday, March 18th at 11 a.m. It'll be nice to continue that outreach and see. Some people kind of said when they redrew this district and they broke the county lines along 8 Mile and along Oakland County, they said, well, you know, what do these communities have in common? And in spending a lot of time, you know, what's happening 2 miles south of 8 Mile looks very similar to what's happening 2 miles north of 8 Mile. And I think our communities have a lot in common, and there's a lot that we can advocate for together, making sure resources are funded. And so I'm very excited to work with our community and communities throughout District 13. Follow me on Facebook. If you want to know where I am on a daily basis, I usually post like 3 to 5 times a week. If you're on Facebook, look me up. I try to give a little bit about what's going on in the legislature, what might be hot topics and issues, or what kind of resources are going on. So it's a great way to stay up to date. And that takes me to the end of my agenda. Community Q&A. Why are you here? What questions do you still have? What concerns do you have? Or what information can I get you? Yes.
Anybody looking at car insurance rates again?
Yes. So it's a problem.
I just got my renewal.
Gotcha. And we were told, so first of all, the first thing that I got when I came to Lansing was Car Insurance 101. That's January 2019. I heard all the information, and truly California and Hawaii's legislation and policy around this was probably the best. And so that's what I was really looking for in legislation. And when they rolled out the legislation at 7 o'clock and they had us vote on it at 2 in the morning, I was a hard no. Because I had read through the legislation, most hadn't. They were leaning into what they were being told was included in the bills, and some of that did not bear fruit. They changed the syntax, like it's no longer, you can no longer put zip codes into your policy, but that doesn't mean that you don't have geographic, like depending on where you live in proximity, that they're not rating on that. They're not supposed to be rating on credit score, but then they changed the language around. So honestly, we haven't seen, most people have continued, I think 85% have continued to have no fault coverage, but it's not the same coverage because we know that the providers aren't there and they're not being reimbursed at the same rate. So if you have a catastrophic car accident, you don't get the same level of care.
I keep the high end. My premium has never gone down.
No.
Never.
And if you look at the language, it doesn't say premium. It says your PIP line, 10%. And I'm with you there. It hasn't moved an inch. I think that they're starting to see that what they thought was going to be a problem solver didn't cut mustard. The question is, what?
I mean, if
I
you're
was told-
low income, you're on Medicaid, and you want to take the high risk of whatever, yeah, you can cheapen up your insurance, but if you want real coverage, it didn't do anything.
Well, and
That's my opinion.
yeah, well, and the 15% of the people who elected not to have coverage, full coverage, are paying higher rates for less coverage, which is a problem. The problem was when this legislation passed, this groundbreaking legislation, it hadn't been touched for 30 years, and they said, well, we're not going to touch it for another, like now that we've got this, it's not going to change for another 30 years. So we do need voices saying, this is not the fix. We still need to go back and revisit this.
Well, put
There's,
me in that column.
put you in there. And let me tell you, as someone who has been against this from the start, I have actively advocated for this change. I see small fixes right now. I see bicycles, I see motorcycles, and we need that fee rate fix for people who have catastrophic injuries, reimbursement. I don't know that I'm as confident that there's going to be ground-changing legislation, a complete overhaul. We're going to need a groundswell of voices. Now, there are people who are leading on this. CPAN, brain injury, they continue. We have people in the Capitol almost every week that are saying your changes are having catastrophic results on our lives. So what took to get this can happen again. But we need to put pressure